The sprinklers went dry. The lawns turned brown. The fountain at the neighborhood entrance sputtered and died. And all of it started the day our HOA president, a woman named Linda, dumped tons of gravel into the little creek running through my backyard. She thought she was beautifying the neighborhood. What she really did was choke the one thing keeping the whole subdivision alive. And because she wanted to flex her clipboard power on me, everyone else got dragged into the mess. I'd always loved that creek. It wasn't big, maybe 8 feet across at its widest, but it was steady, cool in the summer, a trickle of ice in the winter. It reminded me of being a kid, skipping rocks with my dad until my wrist hurt. When I first moved into the house, a neighbor warned me, "You'll regret that creek. It's just a mosquito farm." But I never regretted it. That water kept my grass green when everyone else's lawn burned up in July. It was my quiet soundtrack at night. It felt alive. Linda hated it. She'd been HOA president for 7 years. And if you're wondering how someone holds a volunteer job that long, it's because she ran it like a monarchy. No one dared challenge her. She made every rule bend to her will. And if she said beige mailboxes and uniform hedges were the law, then God help you if you planted roses the wrong shade. One night at a neighborhood barbecue, she cornered me, flashing that razor-sharp smile. "That creek behind your house," she said. "It lowers the tone of our community." I laughed. "It's a creek, Linda. Nature was here before your HOA bylaws." She didn't laugh. She just gave me the look, pursed lips, narrowed eyes, clipboard hugged to her chest like a weapon. I should have known that look meant war. The letters started next, official envelopes tucked under my door. Environmental hazard. Safety violation. Each accusing my creek of crimes like harboring mosquitoes or creating auditory disturbance. I joked that the next notice would charge it with tax fraud. But it wore me down. Letter after letter. Neighbors whispering that maybe Linda was right. Maybe I should pipe it underground. Then one evening I came home to find her and 2 board members standing at the edge of my yard, pointing at a floating leaf like it was Exhibit A in a murder trial. "Inspection," she snapped when I demanded answers. "This creek is unsanitary." I picked up a handful of water, let it run through my fingers. "Looks clean to me." She leaned in close, whispering so only I could hear. "The HOA always wins." That night I sat on my porch, listening to the water. And for the first time, it didn't sound peaceful. It sounded fragile. I told myself nature had been here longer than any HOA. But deep down, I knew Linda was serious. People like her don't stop until they crush whatever's in their way. So I started collecting evidence. Copies of her letters, recordings of meetings. Anything to prove she was stepping out of line. Then came the ambush. At a monthly HOA meeting, Linda rolled out slides, photos of stock mosquitoes, diagrams about West Nile, fake expert testimony from a guy in a neon vest who smelled like diesel. She called my creek a hazard to community health. When I demanded, layman's terms, "Are you planning to bury it?" she clicked to a rendering of a dry bed lined with decorative rock. "Imagine serenity," she cooed. I nearly shouted, "That's not serenity. That's a grave." But the retirees in the front row nodded along, her loyal choir. She pushed a vote, and hands went up, not all, but enough. Motion carried. 3 mornings later. The sound of diesel engines rattled my bathroom mirror. I looked out and saw bulldozers, dump trucks piled high with gravel, orange cones marking my property, and, at the center of it all, Linda in a neon vest, sunglasses glinting, clipboard in hand, like a general preparing for victory. I ran outside, toothpaste still on my shirt. Neighbors gathered, some cheering, some shaking their heads. "What is this?" I yelled. "Community improvement," she shouted back. "Sanctioned by the board." I jumped my fence, boots sinking into wet soil, standing in front of the bulldozer. The operator hesitated. Linda marched up, slapped the machine, barked. "Keep going. You're authorized." The truck tilted, and the first cascade of gravel thundered into the water. My chest clenched as the creek gurgled in protest. I screamed, "Stop! You don't have permits. You don't have my consent." Linda sneered. "Consent isn't required when it's for the good of the community." The crowd applauded that line. Applauded. I pulled out my phone, recording everything. "This is illegal," I said into the camera. "Trespassing, environmental damage, private property destruction." She leaned into my shot, grinning. "Go ahead, post it. The board stands with me." Behind her, another dump truck unloaded its gray tombstones. Within an hour, the water was gone, silenced. That night, sitting on my porch, the silence was unbearable. No frogs, no crickets, no gurgle. Just stillness. For the first time, I wondered if maybe I was wrong. Maybe I had been clinging too hard to something no one else cared about. Maybe I should have just covered it like she wanted. My neighbors looked content enough. Some even clapped for her. Was I the stubborn fool? I almost convinced myself to let it go, to stop fighting. Then the lawns started dying. 3 days later, Mr. Howard across the street stood with his hose, shaking his head. "Water pressure's low," he muttered. A woman posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, "Anyone else's sprinklers failing? My grass is turning brown." Replies flooded in. Lawns, gardens, fountains all sputtering. Meanwhile, Linda threw a victory brunch at the clubhouse, posing for photos on the gravel bed like she'd built the pyramids. Safety restored. Hazards eliminated. Captions read, but behind her, the neighborhood was wilting. That's when it clicked. I drove to the county courthouse, dug through old survey maps, plats that smelled like mildew. And there it was, in black and white. The creek wasn't just a natural feature. It was a designated stormwater management channel, engineered to carry runoff to the retention pond behind the clubhouse. That pond fed the pumps that watered every lawn in the subdivision. By burying my creek, Linda had cut off the HOA's own water supply. I laughed out loud in that dusty records room. She thought she'd beaten me. She'd actually destroyed her own empire. But I didn't rush to reveal it. Timing was everything. Let the lawns turn yellow. Let the fountain die. Let the HOA bleed money on tanker trucks before I dropped the hammer. And bleed they did. Within weeks. Fees skyrocketed. Neighbors cursed rising bills. The city sent warnings about overuse of municipal water at a packed emergency meeting. Linda tried to smile, insisting, "Minor interruptions. The board has it under control." I stood in the back with my red folder. When the moment was right, I raised the city's letter high. "Funny," I said. "The city doesn't think you're handling it at all." The room went silent. For the first time. Linda looked shaken. But I wasn't done. I went back to the courthouse, made copies of every map, every permit. I wanted undeniable proof. The next emergency meeting. Neighbors shouted over one another. Dead lawns, wasted money, failed gardens. Linda snapped. "This is sabotage. Certain homeowners are spreading lies." That was my cue. I walked forward, laid the county maps on the table. "This," I said, tapping the bold outline, "is your irrigation system. And this," my finger traced the creek, "was the lifeline. You buried it. You cut off your own water." The room erupted. Neighbors gasped, cursed, demanded answers. One woman waved a dead hydrangea branch like evidence. "You said it was for safety," a man yelled. "I paid $800 to save my lawn. Who's paying me back?" Linda slammed her palm on the podium, shrieking, "The HOA always wins." But nobody was nodding anymore. They were glaring. For the first time. She looked small. A week later, she showed up at my porch. No clipboard, just fury. Her little dog yapped at my feet while she jabbed a finger in my chest. "This is your fault," she screamed. I sipped my coffee. "Afternoon. Linda, care for some water? Oh, wait. You're short on that, aren't you?" She flushed crimson. "You sabotaged us. You redirected that creek somehow." I laughed. Funny accusation, considering I've got video of you burying it under 5 tons of gravel. You called it beautification. Neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, listening. I raised my voice. If she'd just left my property alone, everything would have been fine, but she had to meddle, had to play queen, and now her crown's made of gravel. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Linda's eyes darted around. Realizing she'd lost the street, she spat. "You think you've won? The HOA always wins." I leaned in close, whispered so only she could hear. "Correction. The HOA used to win, until you strangled it with your own hands. By the next meeting, the board itself turned on her. Fees were draining. Insurance wouldn't cover a dime. The neighborhood looked like a desert. When she tried to rally support, shouting about resilience and unity, someone from the crowd cut her off. "You lied about the creek." Another demanded her resignation. The board held a vote right there, unanimous, effective immediately. Linda was removed as president. She pounded the podium, shrieking, "You ungrateful fools! You'd be nothing without me!" But her voice was drowned out by the sound of neighbors exhaling relief. She stormed out of the clubhouse, dragging her dog, still yelling that this wasn't over. But it was. Within a week, her house was up for sale. Lawn dead. Windows shut tight. The once mighty queen of the Clau de Sac reduced to gossip. Remembered only as the woman who buried a creek and drowned her own empire. I walked home under the quiet night sky. Stopped by the gravel bed. The ground was damp. Small trickles seeping through the stones, trying to carve a new path. I crouched, pressed my hand into the wet soil. "Patience," I whispered. "Water always finds a way." And if there's one lesson I took from all this, it's that arrogance always buries itself deeper than any creek ever could.